What is the biggest sin of cat ownership? I'm sure we could go around the community right here on YouTube and make quite the list. All of those red flags that we're always striving to avoid at all cost. I think we know about the common ones, those loud noises, issues with being too needy and hands-on with our pets, the act of giving too much physical contact and then watching it backfire. And whether you've owned cats for decades or this is just week one, most of us know, I think at least on a surface level, what to avoid. And using all of this as our foundation, the kicking off point of today's topic, in this subject matter I'd like to talk about something that can often fall through the cracks when it comes to this discussion. Just something that I've personally observed that could be a pitfall when it comes to the don'ts of feline ownership. In today's material, using a few examples, I'm going to talk about what I like to refer to as stimulation unfulfilled. The promise that leads to absolutely nothing. The build-up that leaves your cat disappointed and perhaps angry and aggressive. The Easter Bunny that never shows. Santa Claus that's nowhere to be found. Felines can really struggle with the threat of a good time. That payoff that never arrives. Anything interesting that falls flat. If this happens on the regular can really cause a problem with respect to the relationship that you have with your pet. Additionally, outside of that good time never realized, anything of intrigue and great curiosity that just can't be handled directly by a cat, something that's out of a cat's reach, perhaps literally and figuratively, can cause the same problem. Confusion, unhappiness, frustration, and possible aggression. Cats love to be in control, and when they are out of control, unable to get what they want, get what they thought they were about to receive or handle directly in a given situation or event, they can take on a very negative posture. The tease, the ownership tease, the activity that just can't be quite had. That's what I'll speak about today. Very long introduction for what I hope is a very interesting topic for all of you. I've got you covered. Stay tuned. If you've been around senior cat wellness for a while, you know that whenever possible, I do like to attempt to connect the dots between cats and humans, find the direct behavioral links, associate things cats do, perhaps with what your cat does with human examples that can be relatable to all of us. With this red flag topic, the subject of something you should never do, this ownership tease, it has a human connection written all over it. And the examples, while certainly not endless, there are plenty. In life, let's just say when we're not quite at our best, I'm sure many of us, unfortunately, are probably guilty of doing something, anything, whatever it is or whatever it was, just to, say, get a rise out of someone, perhaps a group of someone's. Doing things for your own personal satisfaction, perhaps to make yourself laugh, engaging in something quite harmless, but it's for your personal pleasure, and it comes at the expense of someone else. Now, before we start traveling down a dark road, I think a lot of us do this with children. Heck, isn't the game of hide and seek, at least on a surface level, done for personal pleasure? You're standing behind some tree while laughing at how silly your friend looks as they walk in the wrong direction trying to find you. In that very moment, what's really going on? Well, you're enjoying the pleasures of watching someone else, fail. You're giggling for your own self-entertainment. I would submit that parents do this to children at times just to be fun and silly, and people do this with pets every so often. Parents looking at a baby and saying, "Where'd it go? Where'd it go?" while hiding some toy behind their back, essentially creating a certain level of unwanted drama and suspense for the baby as a form of play. Hey, it happens. What's that commercial here in the United States, that older fella? It's a bit of an older commercial. Just a few years back, the guy with the dollar bill attached to the fishing line, and he's saying something like, "Ooh, almost there, you almost had it," as the person, of course, reaches for the money, only for the man to pull that fishing line away. Well, he's getting a laugh out of failure, right? Yeah, pretty much. And when it comes to cats, with respect to owners being in direct control of this type of behavior, I'm primarily talking about, let's say, playtime, mealtime treats, perhaps a cuddle session. And before I take a deeper dive within this topic, let me say from the start that not everyone does this, not everyone has done this, and not everyone will do this. Just to clear that air right out of the gate. I think we're all familiar, but that doesn't mean that we've all engaged or entertained in this fashion, in this manner. During my experiences, this, let's call it a threat of a good time, sometimes is done during times where you need your cat to change course, change behaviors, to stop doing whatever they're doing and shape up and act properly. Some degree of baiting, either with snack treats, with a play session. You are creating the option of a good time, something different, something fresh, and hoping that the cat will fall for it. And then, when they do, which is the goal, you make the payoff. Now, many times here on the channel, I've talked about positive baiting, toys and cat treats, in an effort to, say, get a cat to emerge from underneath a parked car. And this is good. If you deliver on the promise, it's all good. Show the snack treats. That temptation is enough to get the cat to move to safety and get the reward that you showcased. However, what's the opposite? A reward not rewarded, the prize not had when promised? This is the foundation for today's topic, and one of the things that you should never do around your cat, especially on a regular and routine basis. Teasing your pet, tempting your feline, getting them all worked up over what amounts to absolutely nothing. Over time, and perhaps even in the then and there, it can cause a cat to suffer great conflict, to become very confused, aggravated, and perhaps not sure what to make of your gestures. If the goal, which it should always be, especially in those early weeks and months, and perhaps even early years, if the goal is to build a bond of trust with your cat, playing the game of temptation and takeaway can be very harmful. Long term, your cat will never know when you're being truthful or when you're just, let's just call it what it is, flat out lying. They'll become a bit skittish to accept anything that you're offering because they've learned through experience and your actions that you can't always be trusted. Stimulation unfulfilled, that's what I called it during the early portion of this video, and that's pretty much what we're talking about here. The promise of something good, only to be met with disappointment. Cats, they can go a bit haywire if this becomes the normal. Felines, they love to react to stimulation. They love to be in control and respond accordingly to whatever they're seeing and whatever they're feeling and handling. If a cat is teased and that payoff never comes, this is a bad thing. On the flip side, cats can also find this type of stimulation unfulfilled when they're just, say, looking out the window. Let's say a bird flies by, but due to the fact of where the cat is seated or the cat is located, no play at the bird can really be had because of that glass behind the window there. They are quite literally a spectator to all of this in that regard, unable to manipulate the situation in any real way. Similar to that human tease, this is stimulation that just runs itself straight into the ground. The anticipation of pleasure that fizzles out almost immediately before it ever begins. At the core of all of this, to me, on the human side of things, well, it's all about mocking. It's mockery. That's where so many human examples can be expressed, unfortunately. If your cat is fine, all is right with the world, and you decide to tease your pet with food, with play, with cuddles, with just your attention in general, only to get them visibly stirred up with anticipation and only to walk away, not only is this cruel, it's just a horrible way to win your cat over. Once again, actions done for your own personal amusement and entertainment coming at the expense of others, in this case, your pet. This is the reason why I said that not everyone has done this or ever will do this. I think we'd all like to believe that people, cat owners or not, are just better than this type of behavior. And with respect to this topic, I wanted to cover something a bit different. Something not talked about that often, at least I don't feel that it's talked about that often. Something, let's call it, not as mainstream. It's a bit easier to think of several more notable things that you should never do around your cat, but in all of my years, the behavior manipulation, it's an ugly one. Taking advantage of an animal because you know they don't quite know what you're doing. It's almost like rolling a stone down a hill and just watching the aftermath while seated in a lawn chair. There's something a bit low, let's call it, about taking advantage of an animal's mind, teasing them with what amounts to essential needs, a good time, only to deprive them of it for your own personal pleasure and personal entertainment. And hey, look, I want to be clear, like that bird example, the cat looking at the bird outside the window there are other examples of stimulation unfulfilled that just happen naturally. There's nothing that you can really do about it. But the hands-on bit of cruelty, that's the foundation of this video and what this topic is really all about. Somewhat of a different subject matter this time around, perhaps leaning more heavily on the human element and the human connection, but I thought it was very important to be as relatable as possible. I think whenever possible, in order to understand felines, it's always wise to lean on our own experiences Allow our human experiences, human behaviors and actions to help bridge the gap and make feline behaviors and actions perhaps hit home just a bit closer to home for us. One thing that you should never do around your cat: engage in the anticipation of a positive that intentionally leads to nowhere. If you tease food to your cat, offer it up, give it up. If you tease a cuddle session, playtime grooming session, in the end there needs to be a payoff. If you've teased it, there needs to be a conclusion, a positive conclusion. It's all about trust and following through with what is being presented. If you do as you hint or as you tease, the follow-through, the fulfillment, then your cat will grow to believe you and never be confused by your mixed signals. If you are creating your own personal amusement by pulling the wool over your cat's eyes, in the long run, in the long term, you're only really hurting yourself and ruining the potential of a great relationship with your pet. Would you personally consider all of this to be a major red flag, or is it, in the grand scheme of things, simply not a big deal at all? When taking in the entire journey of feline ownership, is this really not all that important? Your personal thoughts and personal stories. As always, that comment section, it's all yours. And if you did enjoy this content, please give the video a like and please subscribe to the channel. I'd certainly love to have you as a member of the Senior Cat Wellness family. And until next time, as always, thank you so very much for watching, and I will talk to you later.